All right, so are you ready to dive deep into conflict today?
Always ready to dive deep,
Okay, cool.
especially into something as fascinating as the psychology of defeat.
Yeah, so you sent over this excerpt, and it really got me thinking
Hmm.
about how making someone feel defeated can actually backfire.
Hmm.
And especially, if it feels unfair to them.
Yeah.
Like, it made me think of that saying, a cornered animal is the most dangerous.
Right.
Have you ever seen this, like, play out in your own life? We're going to explore why that happens and what to do instead.
Well, I think what's interesting about this idea is that it goes way beyond just, romantic relationships or even interpersonal ones. This dynamic of defeat and the urge to restore balance, it pops up everywhere. Friendships, at work, even in international relations.
It's true, yeah.
It's a fundamental human thing.
The excerpt has this line that I think is really powerful. It says, "A defeated partner is not a happy partner. It is foolish to think that Heshe will not retaliate or look forward to retaliation."
Whoa. Heavy. I think it highlights something very primal in human nature. We crave fairness and balance. When we experience a defeat, especially we think it was unjust,
Right.
it triggers this deep need to right the scales.
So then what about that desire for retaliation? How does that play out?
Well, it can manifest in a surprising number of ways. It's not always like revenge.
Let's talk about, because the excerpt doesn't just say revenge, it specifically uses the word retaliation.
Yeah, and I think there's an important difference there.
I do too.
Retaliation can be much more nuanced.
It's more subtle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most powerful way to retaliate isn't with some big gesture, but by kind of quietly shifting that power dynamic.
Oh, so instead of like an all-out war, you get these more subtle forms of resistance.
Exactly. Think about it. The classic frustrated employee. Instead of confronting their boss, they might start missing deadlines, letting things slip, or just generally disengaging.
Right.
On the surface, it just seems like laziness or maybe incompetence,
Right.
but underneath, it could be a subconscious form of retaliation.
Yeah. So it's like they're saying, you want to treat me like I don't matter? Fine. Watch how much I don't matter.
It's a passive-aggressive way of restoring balance.
Mm.
And it can be so effective because it often flies under the radar.
Right.
It creates this slow-burning resentment that can be tough to deal with.
Which makes it even more dangerous.
For sure.
And it's not just in work, right?
No, not at all.
This makes me think about like those group projects where you feel like your ideas get totally shot down.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely been there, and the next time a project comes around, I'm not exactly, jumping in
Totally.
with the same enthusiasm.
Right, exactly.
So we've got the frustrated employee, the disengaged group member. But this excerpt argues that this can even play out on a much larger scale.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about historical examples of oppressed groups rising up against their oppressors.
Yeah.
I mean, so often these revolutions were fueled by generations of feeling defeated, marginalized, unjustly treated. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Civil Rights Movement.
Right.
These were outpourings of pent-up frustration and a deep-seated need to reclaim power and dignity.
Yeah, it's like that pressure cooker analogy. If you keep adding heat and pressure, eventually something's got to give.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's not pretty.
No.
Okay, so creating a defeated partner is kind of like planting a ticking time bomb.
I like that.
You might win in the short term, but yeah.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for potential trouble
Exactly.
down the line.
So how do we avoid doing that? Because the excerpt does talk about some strategies for avoiding this.
Yes, they're incredibly relevant.
Okay, what's the first one?
The most important one, probably, collaborative problem solving.
What exactly does that mean? I feel like that gets thrown around a lot.
It's about fundamentally shifting your approach to conflict.
Okay.
Instead of viewing it as a battle to be won, you see it as an opportunity to find a solution that works for everyone involved.
So you're not trying to crush your opponent?
No, you're trying to understand their needs and find a compromise.
So instead of aiming for a winner and a loser, you're trying to find a win-win.
Precisely. And that takes a willingness to compromise, to listen to the other person,
Right.
and to be creative in finding solutions that maybe weren't obvious at first.
It's like that old saying, two heads are better than one, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes the best solutions come from bringing different perspectives together.
Absolutely. And it highlights a key point. Collaborative problem solving isn't about avoiding conflict altogether.
Mm-hmm.
It's about approaching conflict in a way that doesn't leave anyone feeling defeated.
Oh, okay. I like that. What are some other strategies they mentioned?
Well, another critical one is empathy and communication.
That seems pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just being nice.
There is. It's about truly understanding and acknowledging the other person's feelings,
Even if you don't agree with them.
even if you don't agree with their perspective. Imagine a boss who needs to make a tough decision, one that's going to be unpopular. Instead of just, dictating the decision, they take the time to explain the reasoning behind it,
Okay.
acknowledge the potential downsides, and validate the team's concerns. They might say something like, I understand that this change is going to be challenging. I appreciate your honest feedback. Here's why we believe this is the best course of action, and here's how we're going to support you through the transition.
So even if you can't give people the outcome they want, you can still give them the respect of being heard and understood.
Exactly. And that can make all the difference in the world in preventing someone from feeling defeated, demoralized.
Okay, so we've got collaborative problem solving, we've got empathy and communication. What's the third strategy?
The third one is mutual respect.
Again, sounds simple enough, but I have a feeling there's more to it.
There is. It's not just about being polite.
What is it about then?
It's about genuinely valuing the other person's contributions,
Okay.
their perspectives, even when you disagree with them.
Even when you disagree.
Imagine like a team working on a project, right? One team member has an idea that everyone's kind of skeptical about.
Right.
Instead of just shutting them down, the team leader says, hey, I appreciate you bringing that to the table. Let's explore it further, see if there's anything we can learn from it.
So even if the idea isn't ultimately used, the person who suggested it still feels like their voice was heard. Their
Exactly.
contribution was valued.
Yeah, and that sense of being respected, even when you're not winning, can go a long way
Right.
in preventing the resentment and the bitterness that can fuel retaliation.
All right, so we've got collaborative problem solving, empathy and communication, and mutual respect. What's the final strategy?
Finding win-win solutions.
That sounds ideal in theory, but is it always possible?
It might not be possible in every single situation,
Right.
but it's always worth striving for.
Okay.
And it takes a willingness to think outside the box, to see things from multiple perspectives,
Okay.
and to be creative in finding solutions that meet everyone's needs.
It's like that old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. If you're committed to finding a solution that works for everyone, you can often find a way to make it happen.
Think about two companies that are typically competitors.
Right.
Instead of just constantly trying to undercut each other,
Yeah.
they identify an area where they can collaborate,
Okay.
pool their resources and expertise to create a product, a service that neither could have achieved on their own.
Interesting.
They both benefit.
Right.
The market benefits from the increased innovation.
It's like that expression, a rising tide lifts all boats. Instead of trying to sink each other, you find a way to make the whole harbor more prosperous.
Exactly.
That's a really good analogy.
It highlights how this principle of win-win solutions can apply not just to, individual interactions, but to whole industries,
Wow.
even global relations.
So to recap, we've got 4 key strategies: collaborative problem solving, empathy and communication, mutual respect, and finding win-win solutions.
Those are the big ones.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that those aren't just, theoretical concepts. They're practical tools.
You can use them every day.
Yeah, to navigate conflict.
Build stronger relationships.
Exactly.
Make the world a better place.
I love that. Before we move on, though, I want to pause for a second and ask you, the listener, a question.
Okay.
We've been talking about how feeling defeated can trigger retaliation, sometimes in subtle ways.
Right.
Can you think of a time in your own life when someone's need to win ended up backfiring on them? Just hold that thought, and we'll come back to it in part 2 of this deep dive into the psychology of defeat.
It's a really good question to think about. And it actually reminds me of something else the excerpt said
Oh, yeah. What's that?
about how ignoring these principles can lead to some pretty serious consequences.
Right. It talks about how consistently creating defeated partners can erode trust, fuel these cycles of retaliation,
Yeah.
and even just cause relationships to completely break down.
It can be really damaging.
Yeah, so let's say, okay, someone's feeling defeated.
Okay. What are some of the less obvious ways that might show up in their behavior?
Hmm.
Like what subtle signs should we be looking out for?
It's like we're playing detective, right? Trying to decipher these hidden messages.
Exactly.
Remember, retaliation doesn't always look like a direct attack. It can be much more subtle and even insidious.
Ooh, insidious. I like that.
Let's take personal relationships, for example.
Yeah.
Imagine a partner who, after repeatedly feeling defeated, starts to withdraw emotionally.
Okay.
They might become less affectionate, less communicative,
Right.
or they might just start creating a less pleasant atmosphere.
It's almost like they're retreating into themselves,
Yeah.
creating this emotional distance
Yeah.
to protect themselves.
Precisely. They may not be consciously trying to punish their partner,
Okay.
but that withdrawal becomes a way of reasserting some control.
So how would that play out in a professional setting?
You might see a similar pattern. Think about an employee who, after having their ideas repeatedly dismissed.
Starts putting in less effort, they miss deadlines,
Okay.
maybe just become a general source of negativity around the workplace.
It's like this quiet rebellion.
Yeah,
But it can be just as disruptive as a confrontation.
exactly. And often it creates this ripple effect.
Meaning.
One person's negativity can spread to others, creating a toxic work environment overall.
Wow. So what starts as an individual's way of coping with feeling defeated
Yeah.
can end up poisoning the well for everyone.
Unfortunately, yeah. And it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
How so?
The more defeated someone feels, the more likely they are to disengage,
Right.
which just reinforces that sense of being overlooked.
Like they're trapped in this downward spiral.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even seemingly small acts of disrespect or disregard can have a profound impact
Wow.
on someone's well-being and their behavior.
Okay, so we've talked about how feeling defeated can manifest. But what about the other side? What about the person who's doing the defeating?
Right.
Are they just jerks, or is there something more going on?
That's a great question. And it's important to remember, it's not always about intentional malice.
Okay.
Sometimes it just comes down to a lack of self-awareness.
Oh, interesting.
They might be highly competitive, driven to succeed,
Right.
and completely oblivious to the impact they're having.
So focused on their own goals that they bulldoze over anyone in their way.
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
so caught up in their own game, they don't even see the casualties.
Right. And it's not always about being a jerk.
Right.
Some people just aren't tuned in to the emotional side of things.
Yeah, they might lack empathy.
Okay.
They might have a communication style that comes across as abrasive,
Even if they don't mean it that way.
even if it's not their intention.
Yeah.
But regardless of the reason, the impact is the same.
Yeah.
When people consistently feel defeated, it damages trust, it creates resentment,
Right.
and it can lead to the breakdown of the relationship.
It's like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions,
Exactly.
Even if someone doesn't mean to be hurtful, their actions can still have a huge impact.
They really can.
Wow.
And it highlights how important it is to be mindful of how our words and actions impact others.
It's a lot of responsibility,
It is.
but it's also empowering, right?
Absolutely. Once you understand these dynamics, you can start making conscious choices
Yeah.
at how you show up.
So as we shift gears and start talking about solutions,
Okay.
what are some things to keep in mind from what we've talked about so far?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that every interaction, even small ones, have the potential to either empower someone or make them feel defeated.
It's like the butterfly effect.
Exactly. One small choice can have huge ripple effects.
Wow.
And another key point is we need to shift our focus from winning
Okay.
to understanding.
So instead of approaching disagreements as battles.
We can try to really listen to the other person,
Right.
empathize with their perspective,
Okay.
find solutions that work for everyone.
So collaboration over competition, empathy over ego.
Exactly. And finally, it's crucial to remember that everyone deserves to feel heard and respected, even when there are disagreements.
Yeah.
Creating a culture where everyone feels valued is not only the right thing to do,
Yeah.
it's essential for building strong, healthy relationships.
Because ultimately, we're all in this together, right?
They are.
We need each other.
Yeah, and that's what leads to true growth and progress.
I love that. Okay, so before we jump into part 3 and explore those solutions in more detail,
Okay.
I want to leave you with one final question.
Okay.
Think about the people you interact with regularly. Friends, family, colleagues. Are there any subtle signs of defeat that you might have been overlooking? Just take a moment to reflect on that, and we'll be right back to discuss how we can shift those dynamics and create more positive, empowering interactions.
All right, welcome back, Deep Divers. We've been exploring this whole idea of the psychology of defeat,
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
uncovering the ways it shows up, the ripple effects it creates.
And even those unintentional ways we might be contributing to it.
It's so easy to do without realizing it.
It is. So let's shift gears a bit now, right?
Okay.
We've kind of diagnosed the problem.
Right.
But what about the cure? How do we actually avoid creating these defeated
Yeah,
partners.
how do we make sure our interactions are empowering and respectful?
Exactly. So, what do you think? What are some of the most effective strategies?
Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful.
Okay, I like that.
One of the best tools is just active listening.
Active listening, I feel like that gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
But what does it actually look like in practice? Is it just nodding and saying, uh-huh?
It's way more than that. It's about really trying to understand the other person's perspective,
Okay.
even if you don't agree with them.
So, like trying to see the world through their eyes?
Exactly. Ask clarifying questions, reflect back what you're hearing to make sure you're getting it,
Right.
and validate their feelings.
Even if you don't agree with their actual point of view.
Even then, that validation can be so powerful.
They can de-escalate things.
Yeah, it builds trust.
Yeah.
Makes the other person feel like they matter.
I'm thinking of like two people having this heated argument about politics or something.
Oh, yeah, classic.
They're both digging in their heels.
Right.
But then one of them says, I hear what you're saying. I get why you feel so strongly about this. And it's like suddenly the whole dynamic shifts.
That's a great example. It doesn't mean they're abandoning their own beliefs,
Okay.
but they're opening up the space for a better conversation.
It takes the wind out of the sails of that defeated partner thing.
It does.
You're acknowledging them without necessarily agreeing.
Exactly.
So what else besides active listening?
Sometimes it's as simple as changing your language.
How interesting.
Instead of using phrases that sound absolute or dismissive.
Like what? Give me an example.
Instead of saying, "You're wrong about that," you could say, "I see things a bit differently, but I'd love to hear more about your perspective."
Oh, that's good.
It takes the sting out of disagreement.
Right.
It makes it feel more open, more inviting.
So we're not afraid of conflict, per se.
No, conflict can be a good thing.
If it's handled well.
Exactly. It can lead to new ideas, deeper understanding.
Right. It can actually strengthen relationships.
The key is approaching those disagreements with curiosity
Okay.
and a genuine desire to find solutions that work for everyone.
It's about collaboration, not competition.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is great. What else can we do to create that more empowering dynamic?
One thing that's often overlooked is celebrating successes together.
Oh, I like that.
When someone does well, acknowledge it.
Mhm.
Give them specific praise, share in their joy.
It doesn't have to be a big thing, right?
No, even a simple, "Hey, great job on that," can go a long way.
It's like that positive feedback loop.
Yeah, the more you acknowledge and appreciate, the more they'll want to contribute.
Right, and it creates that feeling of shared success, which is so important.
It's very bonding.
It's funny, we've been talking about these complex concepts,
I know, right?
but sometimes the most powerful solutions are just the simplest things.
It all comes down to treating people the way you want to be treated
With respect, kindness.
and a genuine desire to understand.
So simple, yet so profound.
It's easy to say, harder to do,
It is. We all have our blind spots, our egos.
but we could get better. Self-awareness.
Cool.
It's like a muscle we can strengthen.
So the more we pay attention to how our words and actions impact others.
Yeah, the better we get at navigating conflict in a way that makes everyone feel good.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
What small change can you make today
Good question.
to make sure everyone feels heard, respected, valued?
Maybe it's pausing before you speak.
Choosing your words more carefully.
Yeah, maybe it's making an effort to celebrate someone else's success.
Even those small shifts can have a huge impact.
They really can.
They can create a more positive experience for everyone.
Absolutely.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
This was fun.
It was. And remember, knowledge is power.
It really is.
And by understanding these dynamics, we can turn conflict from a source of division into an opportunity for growth and connection.